Alright guys, listen up, I'm just going to say this one time. This is the top 5 best loadouts in Warzone 2. These are the only ones you actually need because these are all meta. These are all the things you can do well with, and I counted for the recent nerf. First, I'm going to show you guys the Cronen Squall because it's actually still meta despite the nerf. So, put on the Kastovia DX90 for sound suppression, bullet velocity, recoil smoothness, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, aim walking speed, and aiming stability. Set the bullet velocity to 0.52 inches and the recoil smoothness to 0.54 ounces. Then put on the HR 6.8 barrel for damage range, bullet velocity, recoil smoothness, and hip fire accuracy. Now, you'll get a reduction of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed, but that's not a big deal. Max out the damage range and increase the recoil steadiness to 0.39 pounds. Put on the MW2 because this is still the best sight, in my opinion. 50 round drum, and then the lock grip precision. I did not tune it at all. And this is the end product right here. This is the first thing, and I know you guys probably been waiting for a good loadout since this thing got nerfed. This thing is still so broken despite it getting nerfed. You guys see how fast it took out the enemy? No effort, very easy, literally meta. I apologize to anybody watching this because somebody's going to use this gun against you. Please put it on right now. And for the perks, just straight away, I mean, perk and attachments, stun grenade, throwing knife. I use tracker, double time, fast hands, and high alert. This is if I'm using one gun. If I'm using overkill, and this is what I'm using. Next, we're moving on to the ISO Hemlock because this thing is my baby. I love it so much. It's just such an amazing AR despite whatever they try to do with it. Put on the Harbinger D20 for sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and aim walking speed. Set the bullet velocity of 0.87 inches and the recoil smoothness to 0.54 ounces. Then put on the Fielder T50 for damage range, bullet velocity, hip fire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. Set the damage range to 0.17 inches and the recoil steadiness to 0.15 pounds. MW4 max the far distance, 45 round mag unless you think you can handle 20, which I don't recommend. And then the FTAC Ripper 56 for aiming out stability, hip fire accuracy, and recoil stabilization at the cost of walking speed and aim down sight speed. The aiming out stability of 0.35 inches and the recoil stabilization of 0.65 ounces. This thing has no recoil. It's honestly, in my opinion, it's tied to being the meta with the Cronen Squall. It takes no effort to use. Like I'm not even holding my thumbstick down. That's how easy this thing is. Not holding my thumbstick down and still getting the job done is actually insane to me. Like, why wouldn't you use this gun? Also, if you guys want a good secondary, I have the MP9, which is basically FTAC Siege. I put on that Super Tac VI. This is all the tuning. I'm not really gonna go too into it just because, I mean, this is not part of the top 5. So, increase the, damage range just a little bit. It's not really that important. Sir 160. And then the FTAC folder, I didn't change the tuning. Next, we're moving on to the MP5, which is literally insane. It's amazing movement, and on top of the amazing movement, it also gets the job done very quickly with a great TTK. So, Merc foregrip for hip fire accuracy, recoil steadiness, hip recoil control, and aim walking steadiness at the cost of hip walking speed and aim down sight speed. Set the aim down sight speed to 0.28 inches on the negative side and set the hip walking speed to negative 0.54 ounces. Put on 9mm overpressured for target flinch and set the bullet velocity of 4.94 GR. Set the damage range to 0.45 G. Put on the VLK laser 7 MW for aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and sprint to fire speed. The laser is going to be visible, so keep that in mind. You don't have to change the zeroing distance if you want to. It's completely up to you, but it doesn't really matter. Change the sprint to fire speed to negative 0.23 ounces, and then put on the LM stockless mod for aim down sight speed, sprint to fire speed, movement speed, and hip recoil control at the cost of aiming recoil control, aiming stability, and flinch resistance, which are all things that we took care of earlier. Here's the end product. So easy, and it's literally so broken. Only thing is super long range, you're just gonna have a hard time, so avoid that super long range gunfight and you should do super good. Another weapon that I absolutely love is the TAC 56. Now this build is with a sight. You don't really need a sight. If you don't want to use this, then you can just put on, I don't know, maybe one of these, or either better aim down sight speed or aiming stability. Completely up to you. If you want to put on underbarrel, you can put anything on there. You can put a stock, a rear grip, an underbarrel, a laser, anything other than the aim op. But if you want the aim op, then set it to the far distance, 60 round mag unless you think you can handle 40. If you put on 40, you'll just get more better of the cons. 5.56 high velocity for bullet velocity at the cost of some damage range. Max out the bullet velocity, increase the damage range by 0.61 Gs. Harbinger D20 for sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed, aiming stability, and aim walking speed. Set the bullet velocity at 0.81 inches and the recoil smoothness at 0.54 ounces. And then the 17.5 Tundra Pro barrel for damage range, hip fire accuracy, and bullet velocity at the cost of aim down sight speed and hip recoil control. Set the damage range at 0.21 inches and the recoil steadiness at 0.35 pounds. And here's the end product right here. It's super broken, super easy to use as well. In my opinion, it's definitely up there, especially if you don't have the other meta weapons. Now, if you do have the other meta weapons, I don't know how good this will really fare. I mean, I think it does have high damage, so it'll probably be a strong competitor for both the ISO Hemlock and the Cronen Squall. But at that point, it's probably just personal preference, whichever one you want to use. Now, the last thing I do actually want to show you guys is the Vaznev. The Vaznev is just incredible. It's such a good SMG. Like, to this day, it's such a good SMG. So I have to show it to you guys. And I might show you guys one more alternative just in case you guys want to see it. But we're going to start out with the X10 RR40 for sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed, aiming stability. Now, set the bullet velocity at 0.39 inches and the aim down sight speed to negative 0.05 ounces. On the cast 1381mm for damage range, hip fire accuracy, bullet velocity at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control. Increase the damage range by 0.15 inches and the recoil steadiness of 0.34 pounds. Now make sure you do have the cast one on there, just because if you don't, you're probably going to be shooting P's and you don't really want to deal with that. 45 round mag, and just in case you don't think you can handle 30, I mean 30 is not really bad, but 45 just gets the job done certainly, and the trade-off really isn't that bad. True tack grip for sprint to fire speed and aim down sight speed at the cost of some recoil control. Set the sprint to fire speed to negative 0.15 inches and the recoil steadiness of 0.58 ounces. Last but not least, the broadside FCT for aiming stability, crouch movement speed, and aim down sight speed and sprint speed at the cost of aim walking speed and recoil control. Set the aiming out stability at 0.70 inches and the aim down sight speed to negative 3.87 ounces. Now here's something I'm going to show you. This thing is amazing. Short range, medium range. Long range, you have to burst fire. You have to burst fire long range. You can get the job done because it does shoot fast, but stick to short, medium, and then long range, like I said, burst fire this thing. Otherwise, you're not going to do good. Now, there is one more thing I actually do want to show you guys. I'm not even going to consider it part of the top 5 just because, I mean, not really that important. But it's the Kastov. The Kastov is actually pretty amazing, and I'm just showing you guys an alternative just in case you guys don't want to use any of the top 5 meta loadouts right now. This is kind of off meta, but it still does get the job done. So I put on the Polar Fire S for sound suppression, bullet velocity, damage range, and recoil smoothness at the cost of aim down sight speed and aiming stability. Set the bullet velocity at 0.77 inches and the recoil smoothness to 1.26 ounces. Put on the cast 10 584mm barrel. For damage range, bullet velocity, hip fire accuracy, and recoil control at the cost of aim down sight speed, hip recoil control, and movement speed. Set the damage range to 0.28 inches and the recoil steadiness to 0.26 pounds. Put on the AIMOT V4 for precision. Set the fire distance maxed out on the right. Put on the Demo X2 grip for recoil control at the cost of aiming stability. Increase the aiming out stability at 0.15 inches and the recoil steadiness of 0.29 ounces. Last but not least, 40 round. If you think you can handle 20, feel free, but I don't recommend it. It's just not going to be good. And here's the end product. Very easy to use, and long range, it does get the job done. It's actually very dangerous. Like I said, it's kind of off meta, but in my opinion, it's just as good as the other meta weapons. Like, people really don't use this, but as you guys see how fast it actually melts the enemies, I would highly suggest trying it out for yourself.